Hey, McKay Caston here with Cross-Tethered Preaching, and I am thrilled that you are with me for today's training, How to Build a Relevance Bridge. I do want to mention that today's training is just the tip of the iceberg. So if you like this, if you're helped by this, then oh man, you have got so much more to explore. This is just a small part of the complete PPGR preaching system. And if it's okay, before we get into building a relevance bridge, I want to kind of show you where it fits in the overall scheme of the model that I'm going to show you. So here we have the 4-in-1 sermon prep template. The first part of this is the exegesis guide, where we're simply trying to ask principal questions of the text to understand the main ideas in the text. And then we go to ask problem questions, where we're trying to discover the heart issues in the passage. And then we go down to the gospel, and we want to really be able to communicate and reveal Jesus as the hero of the text, as the hero through his substitutionary atonement. And then the response questions, where we're going, this is the application. We want to discover the practical grace implications of living in union with Jesus. Think John 15, 4 and 5. Think branch in the vine and the sap of the Spirit. So here we're trying to contrast the old way of law of flesh with the new way of gospel spirit. Lots of questions to ask to really get into the text. But all of this material is going to then be put on the storyboard, because here we have our PPGR sermon builder template. All right. And we have a keyword, we have an anchor illustration, anchor image, principle, problem, gospel response statements. Once we have all that, we're ready to build the sermon. And that's where the sermon starts, right here in what's called the pre-lectio. This is the sermon introduction. There are 6 parts to it. The first 3 deal with the world of the Bible, and the second 3 with our world. And if you can imagine, here in the middle is the relevance bridge, which takes us from the biblical world to our own, from the original recipients to ourselves. So that's where it takes place. Now, there's a lot more in this template, because once we build this out and create this irresistible desire to hear this message, we then transition to the principle, and we work this out. We build that out, and there are steps to go through. There are prompts. We have then the problem to transition to. We have the steps to go through. We have the prompts, and then the gospel. We have the steps to work it out, the questions and the prompts to ask to develop the gospel section of the movements we will be looking at. And then we have the final one, which is the response, where grace becomes not only a fallback for failure, but the fuel for new life. And this is so exciting when we get to this. So we're working with a 4-movement model that really parallels the creation, fall, redemption, restoration model that is the DNA of all of the Bible. We want to preach microcosms of the meta-narrative, if that makes sense. So I have a lot more on that in the course. So this is the template. There's more to it. It gives you over here the steps, and over here the prompts. Let's move on, because I know you're ready to learn how to build the relevance bridge that takes place in the pre-lectio introduction. How do we do it? Let's get started. Well, first of all, why do people listen to sermons? That's an important question to ask, especially for those who are preaching. Why do people show up to hear you preach? And it's not because, well, they're supposed to. It's worship on Sunday mornings or whenever we have our gathered time together. But why do people listen? And some of us think that they come for biblical information, when, as important as that is, and some people do come for that, but really what motivates someone to actually engage with the sermon and listen is not just because there's going to be biblical, historical, cultural, theological information presented, but because that information is going to have a personal, practical impact in my life. At the end of the pre-lectio, what we want to do is show the listeners, here is the practical change that is possible for you as a result of this text and this sermon that I'm going to preach on it. They want that change. And it's like, even in sales, if you can say, here's this product, do you want this? And if there are enough benefits to it and they say yes, then they're going to buy it. Here, we want them to to lean in, not to get a product, but to get exposed to Jesus. We want to take them from the text to their own heart, to the cross, then to living in union with Jesus, which is where the change happens because of the indwelling power and presence of the Holy Spirit. So this is all to say that people listen to sermons because they need help. They want something personal, practical, helpful. And what this bridge is going to do is help you move from an information-based sermon to a life transformation-driven sermon. It's going to take your message from merely being a lecture to a true sermon that reflects the full DNA of the biblical gospel redemptive story. So if we can understand that people come to listen to sermons because we're going to share something that is going to actually be helpful and practical and lead to change in their personal lives, then we're ready to go on to build the relevance bridge. In fact, what is the purpose of a bridge? Just in general, the purpose of a bridge is to take people from one place to another place. It might be over a river. They need a bridge to cross over from one side to the other. It might be a ravine that they cannot cross unless there's a bridge built for them. So in the most simple terms, what is a bridge? It's a way to get from one place to another and crossing over in a way that we couldn't do otherwise. So what we're doing with the relevance bridge, the way this applies to a sermon, the key word is relevance. What do you think a relevance bridge is doing? It's taking people from our world to the biblical world, the world of the original recipients, and then bringing that world back to our own. That's what a relevance bridge does. Essentially, a relevance bridge asks, what was the original need of this text for the original recipients? What was their struggle? What was the challenge they were facing? What sins were they struggling with? What fears did they have? And we could go on and on and on, because even though cultures change, the human condition doesn't. And so when we think about these two questions, how do I build a relevance bridge? Well, the first way we build it is by asking that question. What were the issues, the struggles, the challenges, the sins, the fears of the original recipients of the text? Because whatever those things were, we now can bring it across the relevance bridge to our own contemporary context and show how the same things that they needed to hear, we needed to hear. The same things that they struggle with, we struggle with. It's exactly the same. And so when we can bring an awareness of the connection between our world and their world and our world, we have just built the relevance bridge. And when we build that bridge, we're going to bring the issues from the biblical world to our world, and then we're going to do what's called front-loading application. It's a different lesson. In fact, I should mention that when I showed you the templates with all of those parts and pieces, we have instructional videos for each one of those pieces and parts that go from the beginning to the very end of crafting the sermon. We also have a guide for application, an application grid, in addition to the exegesis guide and the sermon builder. Anyway, that's for later. Right now, how do you build a bridge? It's really simple. You simply ask, what were their issues? What are our issues? And then the front-loading application, what are a few ways that we see this lived out? And when we can show that, then we can move to saying, what if you could experience change in this area? What if you didn't have to stay stuck here? What if you actually could and you present the change? You present the benefit. And they're going, yes, I want that. How? Then we read the text and we move on. And we show how from the text to the human condition, to the cross, to the Spirit, that change is able to take place. Not by human willpower, not by guilt and fear, but by grace, love, and faith in the power of the Holy Spirit. It's just amazing, isn't it? It's like one of these eureka moments when you see what is possible and how to make a sermon really relevant. It happens with the bridge. Now, where do you put the bridge? Well, we looked at it a little bit already. We introduce the text. We give context for the text, which is essentially saying, where are we in the story? It's like if you missed 10 minutes of a Netflix show and you come in and you ask your spouse, oh, I just got ice cream, been messing around in the kitchen, and I come back, where are we in the story? That's what context is. Where are we in the story? Then we summarize the text, essentially stating the purpose. Here's why it was written. And then we identify the needs of the original recipients. And once we have that, we're ready to build the bridge. When we build a bridge, now we're showing our listeners how what they needed, we need. And we make it contemporary. We show a few examples of that. And then simply ask, here's the possible change. Do you want that? If you do, this sermon is for you. And they're all in. And they can't wait to hear it. So that's essentially how you build it. That's where you put it. And it's how you take a lecture and make it a sermon. It's how you shift a sermon from information-driven to transformation-driven. And remember why people listen to sermons. They're looking for practical help. So what do you think? What do you think about that? I mean, you're probably saying, well, this is ridiculously simple. Then why haven't we been doing this? Why don't we do it? See, the simplest things can be the most powerful. Simple is really impactful. That's why in our system, I talk a lot about sermonic focus, clarity, and simplicity, and brevity. Because when you can preach that way, guess what? That sermon is easy to understand. So next steps. Now, for those who want to explore beyond relevance bridges to the complete PPGR system, in fact, I think that if you do teach regularly, if you preach, you owe it to yourself to at least check this out. This has been helping me, been helping other pastors in dramatic ways. And if you go to resources.crosstetheredpreaching.com, you're going to get a layout of the journey I've been on, and other pastors have been on, and the impact that this whole system is having on our preaching and the response that we're getting from folks. Absolutely incredible. Some pastors are saying things like this. Simply put, this training has revolutionized my preaching. People are saying my recent sermons are the best I've ever preached. Almost every single pastor who goes all in with this says that. Everyone. That's why I'm saying it's a dramatic thing. The Lord is blessing whatever we're doing here. I'm so grateful for it because the ripple effect of grace from the ministry to the pastor to congregations is it's dramatic. Somebody last week said, folks asked me this Sunday what I'm doing differently. They said the improvement has been, and there's that word again, dramatic. I'm only 2 weeks in, but someone said my last sermon was the best I've preached in the last 15. And he hasn't even been through our coaching yet. Pastor friends, please check this out. And so I'm making an appeal that you would at least check it out. Now, part of why they are loving the system is the response they're getting. But another part of it is because to craft a PPGR sermon, you don't have to create 3 mini sermons. We're not doing 3-point sermons. We're doing movement sermons based on one main idea. And also with our templates, you don't have to start each sermon with a blank page. You have tracks to run on. You know exactly where this sermon is going. You also don't need to generate multiple illustrations for every sermon. We have an anchor image, and we tie everything to it. You don't need to overstudy. You don't need to spend hours reading 10, 12 commentaries because I'm going to show you how to do your own exegesis and use commentaries for help with sticky theological issues and to confirm your own study. And because this is so simple, focused, and clear, you don't need to be stressed all week and up late on Saturday night. You might be up late Saturday night doing something, but it's not going to be preparing for Sunday's message. In fact, if you follow the model, you can have your Sunday sermon completely done by Wednesday afternoon. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. So, crafting a PPGR sermon is essentially the big rocks I could identify like this: identifying a keyword for expository focus and homiletical clarity, clarifying the four movements: principle, problem, gospel, and response, building a relevance bridge. Hey, we've already done it here. Then dropping an anchor illustration to give the sermon cohesion, flow, clarity, and memorability. Then you have the gospel gap that we're going to fill between exposition and application. That's the gospel movement. And then we're going to explore the possibilities of living in the new way, where grace becomes the fuel for new life. So if you want to go this way, you're going to get not only the PPGR preaching system online video course with notes, transcripts, videos, bonus training videos, and everything else. But to make sure you make progress, to make sure you have the results that other pastors are claiming, I offer weekly live PPGR coaching workshops. I mean, they've been going on for a long time. You can just jump in with us. They have Q&A, and we go through everything. There's an on-demand coaching video library. You can catch up on everything. You can go through things in your own time. There's the on-demand PPGR example video library for that as well. There's the complete set of sermon templates, the sermon builder, the exegesis guide, the application grid, the series planner. You'll have the whole cross-tethered preaching community for camaraderie, encouragement, and peer coaching, as well as additional video courses. We've got the sermon delivery skill builder to help you improve your presentation skills. I mean, like immediately. We have how to study for a sermon. We also have how to create your own sermon commentary and more. And there's just, I want to leave no stone unturned to help you get the results that every pastor who's all in has gotten. So learn more at resources.crosstetheredpreaching.com. Start today, start making improvements on Sunday, and join me at our very next live PPGR coaching workshop. I would absolutely love to see you there. Again, my name is McKay Caston, and this is Cross-Tethered Preaching.